Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you again for tuning in to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Collin Manley. It is currently August 8th as of this recording. Yeah, we got another season, or at least a week into the season. Baseball is starting to feel a little bit normal again. Not as many extra inning games, which is nice. We're not having as many postponements. They're happening a little bit, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. We're getting a lot of good baseball games, and a lot of teams are starting to show their full potential. It's starting to feel real, like a normal season. It's never thought it was going to come. It seemed like it was taking forever to get there, but hey, the MLB is starting to feel normal again, and we got a lot of great things that we're going to talk to you today about on the podcast. Obviously, starting things off the same as always, news and noise around the league, making sure that you're caught up on everything that's going on for teams, mostly injury-wise. But then we're going to dive into some awards. You're going to go, awards? What the heck are you talking about? The season's, just barely getting going pretty much. Well, some of our teams were hitting that quarter mark, 15 games into the season. So we're going to look at some awards for the AL and NL, hand those out, talk about some contenders in those awards as well, and kind of get you up to date on people that are really having a strong start to the season. And then the last segment that we're going to talk about is going to be teams on the verge of being sellers. So the last podcast that I had let out, we talked about some early trade targets potentially going to be out there. But now as we're getting further in the season, we're going to start talking about some teams that if they don't start turning things around pretty quickly, we could see them selling for future years, trying to build that farm back up, because we know a lot of teams could use some farm work. I know that. But starting things off, once again, news and noise around the league, keeping you up to date on all big information across the 30 teams in Major League Baseball. And we wouldn't be starting off an MLB podcast if we didn't talk about a little COVID news. And the Cardinals saga is just continuing as more positive COVID tests came in on Friday. So we had 2 additional players, Austin Dead of the outfield and the reliever Ryan Helsley, and 1 staff member unnamed, have joined the growing list for the Cardinals that are testing positive recently. The positive tests have postponed a very big series, as the NL Central leading Cubs were going to be seeing the Cardinals for this weekend. They just took the whole series. They postponed it. It'll be pushed to doubleheaders, most likely later in the season. And that actually now makes 10 consecutive games that will be postponed for the Cardinals due to this team coronavirus outbreak. No word really will be given on the Monday series opener with the Pirates until some more test results come back on Sunday. At least that's the report as of now. That could change over the weekend, but they're waiting for results, most likely Sunday, to decide what they're going to do with the Pirates series. This actually brings the Cardinals up to 16 positive tests, 9 players and 7 staff members. Very different in the sense of the Marlins of how many of them were actually players for them. That's actually kind of a mix between staff members and players. Since the initial positive test that came back all the way on July 30th for the Cardinals. So something that we'll be keeping an eye on and watching is actually going to be some transaction movement, some roster movement that I'm expecting to see with the Cardinals moving forward. If we think that the team is actually going to go ahead and play, we might see some trades or some movings between, their emergency roster, what they're going to do, and then obviously a bunch of doubleheaders moving forward for this Cardinals team. 10 games they got to make up. 7-inning games are going to help this thing get going a lot, but it's a great deal of ground to make up for St. Louis, and we'll just have to be monitoring this, just hoping that they get over the hump, that the positive tests stop for the team and they're able to keep going. Just been a long, lingering issue here for St. Louis Cardinals. Getting to some player news, some players actually coming back. Well, the World Series MVP, Steven Strasburg, he is set to finally make his season debut. Yes, finally. We've been waiting for this. He is scheduled to start for the Nationals on Sunday versus the Baltimore Orioles, barring any type of setback. And he had been sidelined with a little nerve issue in his pitching hand. Strasburg, obviously, he's been known in the past to have some injury issues. That's early in his career and everything. The team was always taking things very, very, very safely. They were concerned with how he was going to hold up over his career. Well, he was coming off a 2019 season in which he made all 33 starts, all of his scheduled starts, and then he dominated in the postseason. So this is some great news, seeing that he's actually set to finally pitch for the Nats, and this is actually going to be even bigger considering the fact that Max Scherzer had to leave Wednesday's start early. A little unsure what's going to happen with him going forward, so losing one of their dominant aces, getting one back is going to help the team out a little bit moving forward. For the Dodgers, well, that injury train, it just keeps on rolling as Corey Seager, he's going to join the ride. He had to exit the game on Friday with some lower back discomfort. That was what the team had announced. The team is also claiming that he is day-to-day at the moment. It's a loaded lineup there for the Dodgers. They're going to be losing one of its best bats so far in the season, as Seager really had entered the game looking pretty strong. He was hitting .347 on the season with 3 home runs and 7 RBIs. Was also on a pretty great hot stretch for the team, as he was hitting safely in 8 straight games for the Dodgers. So that's a big piece that they didn't want to see go away. But again, day to day, so probably pretty optimistic that he'll be back shortly with just having a little bit of that lower back discomfort. And luckily for the Dodgers, Mookie Betts was able to make his return to the lineup Friday as well after missing the previous 3 games because of an injured finger, and he looked great in his return back. That team has just got so much firepower to it. They lose one guy, they get one guy back. It's pretty incredible that they just keep rolling forward, and they're going to be a tough team in that NL West, and they need it. The NL West is loaded. A lot of news coming out of Minnesota as those hot Twins are trying to manage a cluster of injury issues. So the first one would be Josh Donaldson. He was placed on the 10-day IL with what was called a right calf strain on Friday. Their big free agent addition for the Twins. He's struggling a tad to the start of the season. So far, he's only batting .182 with 1 home run and 2 RBIs to his name this season. Definitely a slow start considering how he's been playing over recent seasons. With the performance that the team has really been giving so far, though, they're going to allow him to get a chance to heal up and boost that team's stellar offense moving forward, because everyone else in that team has been picking up just fine as they've been putting up a lot and lot of runs so far when it comes to the Minnesota Twins, scoring 70 runs so far in the season, outscoring opponents by 28 runs. So they've been doing pretty great with that. Luis Ariz, well, he was also out of the lineup for Minnesota for the second straight game, but manager Rocco Baldelli, he claimed it was just a very minor knee soreness, so they're hoping that Luis will be back in the lineup shortly as well. Not too concerned about that. But when it comes to the Twins and some pitcher health, they had some news as well. Rich Hill had traveled with the team to Kansas City, as the team is really hoping that he gets to ramp up soon. He's doing some throwing exercises right now. They want to get him returned into action in the near future. They're pretty optimistic about him going forward. But on the other side of things, Homer Bailey, he stayed behind in the Twin Cities and is not currently throwing at all, according to manager Rocco Baldelli. So nothing really going on there for Homer Bailey. So some good news, some negative. Twins weathering the storm pretty well, though, as they're still sitting 10-4 on the season, doing pretty solid. The Cincinnati Reds, well, they had to pull center fielder Nick Senzel in the fourth inning of Friday night's game versus the Brewers due to some left groin tightness. Senzel was showing some discomfort when he was running the bases earlier in the game. They had seen it in the first inning. I believe he was on first base, moving on to third base on a single by another player, and they noticed the discomfort, but he didn't end up getting pulled until the fourth. Kind of taking it day by day with him as well. The team is getting optimistic, though, for the return for another one of their big players, one of their free agent acquisitions, and Mike Moustakas. And that was coming straight from manager David Bell, who said that they are hoping for a return soon. Moose, he had been sidelined due to a bruised left quad, and they thought he could return to the lineup as soon as Tuesday, potentially. And that's a big day that they have circled because it's coming off a scheduled off day on Monday. So they're hoping that they'll have things figured out with Moustakas by then. Hope is brewing in San Diego as well, as Eric Hosmer is looking to be activated prior to Saturday's game against the Diamondbacks. So as of hearing this podcast, it could already have been done. He could be activated, knowing that this doesn't get released until Sunday. Hosmer has been out since July 28th, dealing with a bout of gastritis. Hosmer was a really hot bat for the Padres before exiting after 3 games. He was going 5 for 10 with 2 doubles and a home run, and that's just going to make that Padres offense even better, as they have been fighting in that competitive NLS. We were talking about that before with the Dodgers. Padres right now are sitting at an 8-6 record, so they will probably welcome any additions back to the team. I am sure looking forward to that. For the Milwaukee Brewers, Ryan Braun took batting practice for the first time Friday since being put on the 10-day IL as well from an infected right index finger. It's looking like the veteran Brewer could be activated in the coming days as soon as Sunday. That's the earliest that he can be put back on the roster versus the Reds. Also for Milwaukee, Avisail Garcia, he's day-to-day after being hit by a pitch on the right wrist Thursday versus the White Sox. It appears that the new Brewer avoided any broken bones and could return to the lineup soon. Manager Craig Counsell said they really avoided a scare on this one, saying that Garcia was just feeling pretty sore. That's why he sat out 1 game, hoping that they got away with no issues there. For the Blue Jays, they have placed Trent Thornton on the 10-day IL list Thursday due to some right elbow inflammation. The club has said they're going to proceed with caution with the right-hander. He's going to miss at least his next start and will continue to be evaluated over the next coming days. Blue Jays kind of trending downward right now, struggling with a little bit of their pitching. They have some offense going their way, but they need that pitching. So they're probably hoping to get Thornton back as soon as they can, for sure. Some news coming from the Astros as center fielder George Springer. He was out of the starting lineup Friday for the Astros series opener against Oakland. It was a big series for the team battling in that AL West. He had suffered a right wrist sprain while diving for a ball in the 5th inning Thursday against the Arizona Diamondbacks. The manager, Dusty Baker, said an MRI was performed early Friday on Springer and showed no broken bones. He said it's good news, nothing's broken. Very positive sign moving forward. Springer kind of been having some issues at the plate this year, but defensively he's still kind of a big player for them. Hoping that things get better for him moving forward. A little rest may help him turn his season around a little bit, but not too much. When you only got 60 games, you never know what's going to happen. Other news for the Astros is right-hander Austin Pruitt, who was acquired by the Astros in January in a trade with the Tampa Bay Rays. Well, he was transferred to the 45-day injured list on Friday, and Dusty Baker said it doesn't appear that he will be ready to join the team anytime soon. Pruitt had said at the end of training camp that he had a bone bruise in his elbow, and he really had hoped to only miss the first week of the season. But it's looking like he hasn't responded to therapy very well, even though he's been working hard at it. So we're not going to see Pruitt what seems to be for quite some time. For the Texas Rangers, Rougned Odor, he returned to the lineup Friday. That was big after missing 4 games with tightness in his right oblique. But Joey Gallo actually ended up sitting with a sore right wrist, which had bothered him during the 3-game series with the Athletics earlier in the week. So hoping that the big slugger can come back. That's a big bat for the Rangers moving forward. They need all the help they can get as that team has been battling some injuries this season as well. For the Rockies news, Chichi Gonzalez, he's been placed on the 10-day IL list as well, retroactive to Tuesday, with some right biceps tendonitis. He was scheduled to start Saturday, so Rocky's going to have to make some big changes there. They've actually had some great pitching coming from some of their starters, so going to have to move things around a little bit there. So that's going to be some of our news and noise around the league, getting you caught up on a lot of injuries. Pitcher injuries still lingering around, but we're starting to have some more position players happening. Starting to get in the full swing of the season. You can feel like it's actually getting a tone down finally a little bit for some of these pitchers. We're going to have to see if that continues moving forward. Next up, we are going to have some award watches. This is something I was excited for, got to dig into. We're going to look at awards for the National League and the American League. We're going to start things off with the American League moving forward. We're going to look at all the big-time awards after we take a quick commercial break here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Collin Manley, on the GSMC Podcast Network. Taking a quick break right here after this commercial.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Collin Manley, and we need to talk about some awards this season. Yeah, I know. We're only briefly into the year, but we have a good portion of our teams that are hitting the quarter mark. That means we are 15 games into the season, so I thought it was a good time to take an opportunity to look at award season. If we were to end the season right here, right now, a quarter of the way through, how are we doing? And I looked at some of the major awards that have to do with MLB. So, Manager of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Reliever of the Year. I love my relievers. I have to bring them up. Cy Young Award, and of course, our MVPs in baseball. And we have a lot of players that we potentially could be talking about here. So, it was very well working out in the sense that we could break this up into two segments. We can talk about the American League, and we can talk about the National League and how this would both break, which, of course, at the end of the season, both leagues get their own winners anyway. So it works out pretty well. And we're going to start things off by looking at, of course, Manager of the Year. And in the American League, it would look to be a two-man race at the moment in the American League, as a couple teams really sit with the top record for the season so far. But we can also we could top it off with an honorable mention vote out there so far on this season. But I think when it comes to Manager of the Year, American League is pretty easy. So if we have an honorable mention or others receiving votes section, we got to give a mention to Aaron Boone, as the Yankees are sitting here at 9-4 on top of the AL East, really blowing things away as the Orioles are falling off. Tampa Bay, Boston, Toronto, they aren't looking to be huge, massive teams right now in the AL East. And the Yankees are just being steady as they're putting up a lot of runs. They've scored 65 runs so far this year, given up 52. I'd like to see that come down a little bit, but they have just really been the class of the AL East, and this is to no surprise to anybody. We thought this team was going to be really great coming into the season, and they're just continuing to go that way. So no shock here, as we have to give at least Aaron Boone a little consideration as we talk about Manager of the Year. But it really is a two-man race, as we should be talking about Bob Melvin with the Oakland A's and Rocco Baldelli with the Minnesota Twins, as both teams at the time of this recording are sitting at 10-4 in the American League with the best record in the American League. They've just been great. Now, in the AL Central, that Twins team is sitting above a competitive White Sox team. Detroit Tigers and Indians both have winning records right now, doing a great job holding off, scoring a ton of runs as they've put up 70 runs so far this season, only giving up 42, and that offense is just really clicking. And, they're sitting at 10-4, and they've also just lost their last 2 games. So they're coming in on a little bit of a slump, even if you can consider it that, for this Twins team that's been dominating so well. And then an Oakland A's team that in the AL West, we knew there was one other team they'd be competing with, really, in the Houston Astros. And they're sitting at 6-7, not much of a threat right now. Obviously, a lot of season to be left. But Oakland is on a 7-game winning streak. They are just red hot right now, showing that they are a dominant, good team to be reckoned with in the American League, and Bob Melvin really has those guys rolling. So if we have to pick an AL Manager of the Year, we're going to have co-winners for this one. I'm going to cheat right away. And Bob Melvin and Rocco Baldelli, I just think it's fair with both teams doing as well as they are, sharing the best record in the American League. Rookie of the Year. Now, this one was difficult. Very, very difficult here, as we have some great rookies in the American League to start this season. And it may get even more competitive as we move forward. And I wouldn't be surprised as well, because I didn't even consider, obviously, Joe Adele, who just got called up by the Angels. He could have a blow-up season and be a big rookie, but he just got there, and he's just joining the list of impressive names so far. So I am going to start off with some pitchers, and all of these pitchers are going to be guys that are considered others receiving votes, some honorable mentions, because when it comes down to it, you got to have some great numbers as a pitcher at the quarter mark, at least 15 games in for this season, to really show that you deserve the Rookie of the Year. Or, some bad offensive players, but that's just not the case in the American League at all. And so I have 4 pitchers that have been doing pretty well so far in the American League. I'd at least like to give a little shout out, a little mention of, just because they flat out deserve it. So for the Oakland A's right away, we got Jesus Luzardo, who has 11 2/3 innings pitched for the Oakland A's so far. He's showing off with a 2.31 ERA and 12 Ks. Now, something about him is he's only got 1 start. He had come out of relief a little bit. I think he's going to get more starts as we move forward into the season. He looks like he's got some top-notch stuff, and he's a name that I think could make some movement after 60 games, after this whole season. One guy that I have my eye on going forward for sure when it comes to Oakland. The pitcher that has been fun to watch, Randy Dobnak, he is bringing goggles back with the Twins, along with some solid pitching. I mean, he is 2-1 to start the season. You go, 2-1, that doesn't seem that impressive. Well, look at the rest of his numbers, as he's sitting here with a .60 ERA through 15 innings pitched. And he has some solid whip numbers, so walk, hits allowed, and inning pitched, of 0.87. So I'm sure the Twins are like, this is a very welcome addition to our staff. He had really flown up in the minors, and now they're happy to have him up there, and he's still doing a great job. 2 other names just to mention would have to be Christian Javier and Brandon Bilak for the Houston Astros, as they've been trying to figure out some pitching for themselves. They are having some strong seasons for them. The pitching rookies in the AL could be very tough this year. Very, very tough. You would have to consider them when it comes to these awards. The problem is we got 2 hitters right now that are just mashing the baseball. And that first one has to be Luis Robert. He has been a standout for the White Sox, batting .327 with a .393 on-base percentage, 3 doubles, 2 home runs, and 6 RBIs. But you got to remember, he's been working out of the leadoff spot a lot for the White Sox, so that RBIs number is not going to be that high. Showing he's a capable speedster, though, as well, as he's got 4 stolen bases to start this. He has started in all 14 games. He has been deserving at this quarter mark for a Rookie of the Year award. The problem is there's one guy who's standing above him as well, even though Robert's been so great, and that has to be Kyle Lewis. Kyle Lewis has to be the quarter mark Rookie of the Year so far. He's got a .375 batting average, .426 on base percentage so far. The center fielder also has 3 home runs and 10 RBIs to show his ability to really bring guys around, score some runs. The Mariners have to be just loving what their 2016 first-round pick has produced so far, and we'll have to see how he progresses as the 2020 season rolls on, because he does have a lot of strikeouts. He likes to swing. He likes to go after that ball, but, I mean, he's doing a great job in putting the ball in play and getting on base. So Kyle Lewis would have to be our AL Rookie of the Year so far in the 2020 season. Now, reliever of the year. Yeah, these guys are important. They need to get a shout-out as well, too, because that's a stressful job they have doing coming out of the bullpen. We have a handful of relievers that have been good to start the season, but in all reality, one of them should walk away with our reliever of the year at the quarter mark in the AL. Giving a shout-out to some of these guys. Brad Hand, he is 4 for 4 in save chances for the Indians. He's been good. That ERA is a little high right now, because he has been giving up 5 runs early in the season. So he's getting saves, but he's struggling a little bit with keeping runs off the board. He also has, outside of save opportunities, one game where he got hit around a little bit. Another person who's been solid, though, this season is Alex Colomé. 6 scoreless innings for the White Sox so far. 4 for 4 in save chances as well this season. So late game, the White Sox have had a steady picture. Colomé was a guy that had been talked about earlier in the season before it even started as a potential trade candidate to get some people back. But White Sox are sitting here at 8-6, probably going, we got the playoffs on our mind. We're going to keep this guy around. He has allowed 5 hits on the season. A little concerning with that being almost 1 hit an inning, but he's still closing the door, getting out of everything that he's had. So all been scoreless. Hoping that means good things for Colomé moving forward. But if we have to pick one reliever of the year out of the American League, it's kind of a very easy decision, as that winner has to be Zach Britton for the Yankees so far. His numbers are great, even though it's early. He is a perfect 5 for 5 in saves on this season. But that is just the start. Only 1 hit has been given up so far in this season. He has batters hitting .067 off the closer so far this year. And the funny thing about it is we don't even know if he's going to be the closer moving forward for the Yankees, because Aroldis Chapman is coming back. Maybe they'll bump Britton out of there. I hope they don't, because if there's anything that's going on, he has shown that he has earned that spot to be a closer. But regardless, that back into that bullpen, if Chapman is healthy, looks really great with him and Zach Britton. Britton being our quarter mark of the year, reliever of the year in the American League. Cy Young Awards, well, we have some pitchers doing some great things so far this season. And the best of them could potentially be in the American League right now. So we do have to take a moment again to shout out Randy Dobnak again. I mean, that rookie for the Twins, he's been great. He's starting that season 2-1. We talked about his ERA at .60 ERA. And 15 inning pitch so far. He's only given up 9 hits and only 1 run on the season. Now, he's not much of a strikeout guy. He's only got 8 strikeouts in 15 innings. But he's finding ways to get people out regardless. Having a strong start. He would get some noise, some chatter, and a Cy Young vote if the season were to end right now. And as a rookie, that's pretty impressive. Great things there for the Twins. Another guy posting a great season as well is Lance Lynn for the Texas Rangers. He is leading the American League with a .49 ERA. That's over 18 and a third innings pitched. That is just solid work. Sad to see his record is only 1-0 with that being 3 games started that he's doing all of this. Only 6 hits surrendered on the season. Only 1 run has scored. Plus, on top of that, he has a strong 24 strikeouts on the season. But when it comes to strikeouts, though, we do have one guy that is absolutely dominating from the mound and in that category, and they would have to be our American League Cy Young so far in this season, and that would be Shane Bieber. He has been unbelievable to start the year for the Indians. 21 and 2/3 innings pitched. So over 3 starts, on average, giving you about 7 innings. That's pretty great. And in that time has an amazing 35 strikeouts in just under 22 innings pitched. That's just showing that the guy's been unhittable. People are struggling with him. He sits at 3-0 on the season with a .83 ERA so far for Cleveland. And let's just hope that it keeps going. This guy has been electric and too much fun to watch. What is it with the Indians just getting great pitching? It doesn't stop. They have all of these guys that just know what they're doing on the mound. Man, Indians pitching, it's great. Shane Bieber, our American League Cy Young so far this season. And then lastly, the big one we got to talk about is MVP. And we got some real producers on this one. And if it was a normal season, I very much would be curious to see how people voted for this. I have 4 names written down. 3 names that I feel confident would be in the discussion. And they should be in the discussion. And then 1 that I wonder how much love they would get. If we had to vote right now, if we brought all the baseball writers in, everyone that has an MVP vote, I just wonder how high he would be and how many votes he would get, and I'll talk about that in a reason. The first guy, though, would have to be for sure Carlos Correa. Now, Houston is having some issues because of the fact that they're 6-7 right now. Got to pick that up for them. But it's not Correa. He's not the reason that they are in any way struggling at all, as the shortstop has been pretty darn good for them moving forward. Doesn't have any errors so far in the season. Been solid at the shortstop position. That's good for the Astros. Batting average, also been very, very good for the Astros. He's been doing a great job getting on base. Pulling up his numbers here real quick. Hitting .375 on the season. 2 home runs, 6 RBIs. He's another guy that he's kind of been moving around because of injuries in the lineup, usually towards that top end, having a good start to the year. For this Astros team, they got a lot going on. We all know their history, everything that's happening. They're going to need some strong performances from some players if they want to make a deep run again. Now, the pitching is going to be in question as well moving forward. So the offense is going to be even bigger, and Carlos Correa has been helpful in that situation. 18 hits, 4 doubles, 2 home runs like we said before. Just doing his job to get on base. He's been a big player so far in the American League. The next guy that I want to bring up is the guy who's in the conversation every stinking year, Mike Trout. Taking a game off to have a kid doesn't matter. He came back with that dad strength, and we should have known. Dad strength's just a real thing. He was going to come back and start hitting home runs. It just had to be that way for Mike Trout, and his numbers are just great. Again, no surprise. Batting .317 on the year, 41 plate appearances, 13 hits, 8 runs, 1 double, 5 home runs, and 11 RBIs. .370 on base percentage. The guy's good. You just can't. He's going to be in this MVP conversation every single season for a long time, it feels like. And it's just not slowing down in any sense whatsoever. So, got to give Mike Trout his shout out. Now, before I give what I think would be the winner right now, I do have to talk about my one that I would find interesting, and that's Nelson Cruz. I show my love to him quite a bit here on the podcast. it's deservingly so, as he currently, in 14 game played, 52 at-bats, 19 hits. So he's batting .365. That's great. 3 home runs, 15 RBIs. The question is, are we going to give love to the DH? DHs don't win MVPs because they're not out there playing defense. Sometimes they just don't get the love, and they really got to be hitting the crap out of the ball to get some votes. I mean, David Ortiz tried for many years. It just isn't an easy thing. And I just wonder if he would be getting votes even as a DH. I could be very much wrong, but when it comes to the history of this thing, it just doesn't seem to happen. And if I had to pick an MVP right now, it would have to be Aaron Judge for the New York Yankees in the American League. 7 home runs in 10 games played. He's played 14 now, but he had 7 home runs in 10 games. 17 RBIs, and he's still batting around that 300 mark. Pretty solid. This guy is instant offense in the lineup, and he is a big reason as to why the Yankees have been good. If Aaron Judge continues this pace, he's going to have some ridiculous offensive numbers. I mean, the guy's responsible for 17 of the 65 runs scored so far for one team. Almost a full third. That's pretty solid. I'd love to see this continue going forward. Even as a Red Sox fan, I just love seeing guys mash the ball, and he's doing a great job doing it. So if we had to pick our American League MVP so far in this season, I would have to go with Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees. So that's going to be our American League award winners so far in the season. We got the National League coming your way shortly. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to dive right back into it here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Here with your host, Collin Manley. We just got done talking about our American League award winners. We talked about our Manager of the Year being Bob Melvin, Rocco Baldelli. Rookie of the Year, had to give that to Kyle Lewis, just over Luis Robert. Reliever of the Year, got to go with Zach Britton. I think that one was an easy one. Shane Bieber going for the Cy Young Award. Man, just thinking back about it, I didn't even mention Garrett Cole is having a good season, but I just think Bieber is that great. And our MVP, I think I had to go with Aaron Judge so far. But after going over all of that, it's time to talk about our National League as well. I mean, 2 leagues, got a lot of great players. There's a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences looking at this. It was funny to dive into both of these. And the quarter mark doesn't help because there's not a massive amount of statistics, but hey, it was still fun all the same. So we're going to start off with our Manager of the Year. And it's highly competitive in the National League compared to the American League. Quite a few more names capable of being thrown into the conversation, while we definitely feel like the American League was a lot easier to decide. And I have to start off with one here just because if you haven't been paying attention to baseball, it's been crazy. Don Mattingly deserves some recognition here. The Marlins haven't played the games that the other teams have. That's my knock on them. That's why I wouldn't give it to them right now. Because at 8 games, I mean, you're halfway through what everyone else has played, and you don't know what's going to happen. But the fact is, they just keep winning with everything going on, creating a makeshift roster. The more I think about it, it's like maybe I am not giving them enough. I might need to be giving them more credit. But the lack of games just makes me look elsewhere, even with all the work they've had to do trying to put a team on the field. And pitching-wise, I mean, they've just gone crazy, and Manley's been doing a great job. So I have to give him his moment, even though it's just like he hasn't qualified. They haven't played enough games, I think, to potentially get that. So I got to shout him out, though. Brian Snitker deserves a little love, as well as injuries with pitching have really tested the Atlanta Braves early. Standing at 9-5, really having to work that roster, trying to find the pitching to get things going. They're doing a great job there in Atlanta, and you got to shout them out. You really do. That National League East is interesting when you have that Marlins and Braves team, and the rest of it, there's games that need to be made up. It's going to be an interesting ride for the National League East moving forward. But when it actually comes down to our winners, we're going to be like the American League, and I think we have to have co-winners as we look at Bud Black with the Colorado Rockies and David Ross with the Chicago Cubs. They would be the two that are deserving of the award at the quarter mark. Both tied for the best record in the National League, both at 10-3. We also have the Dodgers at 10-4 as well, so you could give Dave Roberts some recognition as well. But I think Bud Black and David Ross would be our picks. The Rockies may be a little more shocking than the Cubs for their success this year. So if you were to lean Bud Black because of that, I mean, I would understand. But when it comes down to it, a first-year manager in David Ross is also doing very well. So you have to respect it and give it the attention that it probably deserves. So for the National League, our managers of the year, co-managers of the years would be Bud Black and David Ross. Now, Rookie of the Year, and this one was tough. The American League was crazy deep in rookie competition. Crazy deep. The National League right now is not quite there at the moment. A couple of position players have okay numbers, but not many games played to make themselves big players in the award, I would say, right now. I think one guy might actually run away with it a little bit at the moment, but we are going to talk about a few names. So right away, Jake Cronenworth has some all right numbers for the Padres. He's batting .360 right now, which that looks really great. 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, even 2 triples in this young season. The problem is he's only appeared in 8 games for the Padres, 8 out of their 14, and only has 25 at-bats on the season. So it's the numbers thing. It's just like talking about Mattingly with the Marlins. It's almost like you haven't played enough. We're looking for guys that are more regular contributors, at least in my mind, I'm looking at right away. So while it is a promising start, we need to see just a little more regular play from Cronenworth going forward. Andres Jimenez for the Mets, he has more play. He's played a lot more than Cronenworth, but less numbers. So 13 games played for him so far with 29 at-bats. The shortstop, he's hitting .276, only 1 RBI on the young season. The Mets would love to have a bounce back, or not a bounce back, but they would love to have back-to-back Rookie of the Years, but the production would have to pick up. And there's quite a few other names of some players that their averages look all right, but they're around that 10 at-bat mark. They just 10 to 15. It's position players in the National League right now. It's just not up. And that could change as the season goes on, as these guys play even more. It may not be a problem, but as of looking at it right now, it's just hard to pick any of those position players for the National League. So I'm going to move on to the pitching staffs. And there really are 2 pitchers that stand out at the top for the NL, both showing their stuff in the National League West, actually. So Logan Webb has been a nice surprise for the Giants. He's starting the season 1-0 with a 2.13 ERA over 12 2/3 innings pitched. Pretty solid. Currently at 10 strikeouts and 1.5 whip on the season. Solid start for a rookie. Not bad. He's right there, but we have one other guy that has been just a little bit more dominant, even if some of his stats may not show it all the way. I think we'd have to go with Dustin May for the Dodgers so far. Big Red there. His ERA sits just a little tad higher at 2.63 than Logan Webb's 2.13. But May has more work in 13 and 2/3, so he's got another inning. 15 strikeouts compared to the 10 strikeouts. And his whip is actually sitting at 1.17, so quite a bit lower than that 1.5. If May keeps this pace, he could really take this thing easily. He was probably a hands-down favorite with Gavin Lux not playing so far for the Dodgers. In this NL Rookie of the Year, this National League was just tough compared to the American League. If I had to put my vote down right now, it would be Dustin May. I got to come out and say, come on, National League. These rookies need to start bringing some competition, whether it be getting some more playing time or somebody just stepping up and taking it. Maybe Logan Webb will turn it around and just get better numbers than May as the season goes on. But that's going to have to be our National League Rookie of the Year so far, and Dustin May for the Dodgers. Now, reliever of the year. Similar to the AL, we have a lot of guys that have been solid so far in closing games, with one standing with a little bit better stats on the top. So, gonna give him a shout out. But a couple guys we want to talk about. Brad Kinsler, he's doing well for that surprise Marlins team. Sitting there at 7-1. Well, he does have three saves and as many chances. He's really helping win and close games. He's been working well for that Marlins squad. So he might be an interesting name going forward. But with 3 saves, he's up there with a lot of their teams in less games. So that's an interesting mark right there. Trevor Gott for the Giants and Jairo Darez for the Rockies both have 3 saves apiece as well. But there's actually another NL West pitcher, an NL West closer, that has the best numbers at this time for the season. So Kenley Jansen sits 4 for 4 on save chances, while only allowing 1 run so far in 6 innings of work. His numbers just stacking up against these guys has been better so far. And these numbers really were fun to look at because closers and other relievers having the new pitching rules in place, I'm really wondering how this is going to shuffle as the season goes forward. Obviously, very early, these guys' totals, numbers for closers is low. And a lot of closers, regardless, they're used to coming in and pitching a full inning. But we might see some other relievers coming in later doing better. I mean, I know I like to pump up Josh Hader too, and he's only got 2 chances so far out of the bullpen. So see if the Brewers get him more opportunities moving forward. After 60 games, we should see some of these guys stand out a little bit more. But just looking at it the quarter of the way, I would say our reliever of the year has to be Kenley Jansen. So Cy Young, man, this was fun. Just like the American League, we have some great starting pitching so far from the National League. And some of the best of it is even happening on the same stinking team. It's really interesting to see. Starting off with someone that deserves to get some votes in what he is doing, we got to mention German Marquez, who has been solid for the Rockies. Hot start for the season as they're sitting there at 10-3. He's 2-1 to start the year with a 1.89 ERA. And over 19 innings pitched, he has 23 strikeouts. The 25-year-old's off to a nice pace, and he's got a nice solid whip under 1 sitting at .89. That's some pretty great stuff. A pitcher that I could see getting better numbers as the year goes on. He's got some great stuff. I do want to take the time to mention Brandon Woodruff. He got taken by the Cubs early in the season, but he's still 2-1 for that Brewers squad. 17 innings pitched. He's averaging almost 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. Pretty solid. That whip is also under 1 at .92, 2.08 ERA. He's got some electrifying stuff, and he's got some velocity that's great. His slider velocity is one of the best in the majors, right up there with DeGrom. DeGrom actually is the best by a long stretch right now, but Woodruff is up there. He's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised to see get some more run in a Cy Young later in the year. But right now, we got to talk about the 2 standouts in the National League. and they are both currently wearing Reds jerseys, and it truly is hard to pick one over the other. But if you flat out just put the stats and stack them on top of each other, I think it helps you out. So we'll start by talking about Sonny Gray coming over to the Reds. He's 3-0 on the season for Cincinnati with a .96 ERA over 18 and 2/3 innings pitched. Solid numbers. Currently sitting at 28 strikeouts, having a whip of .70. Opponent batting average is currently .129 against him. But the problem was, even with those great numbers, he's got a teammate doing even better. Trevor Bauer should be the National League Cy Young at the quarter mark. Just coming off another great start Friday. Numbers across the board are just a little bit better than Gray. Looking at ERA, Bauer, .93 to Gray's .96. Bauer, 19 and 1/3 inning pitched to Gray's 18 and 2/3. Bauer has a .57 whip to Gray's .70. Batters against Bauer, batting 109, Gray batting 129. It's so tight. It's so great. The thing that actually is the most crazy at looking at these numbers is you've gotten 6 great starts from these two guys for Cincinnati, and they're 6-8. They're not doing as well when other guys are pitching. They need to get that going because these two guys are giving you Cy Young type stuff. And I just have to mention, it makes you wonder how great this Cleveland Indians staff could have been this season if they didn't trade him last year. I mean, even Sonny Gray getting traded from the Yankees, if they got this Sonny Gray in New York, it would have been unbelievable. I can tell you one thing, though. The Reds, they aren't complaining about it. They're okay with this all happening. Definitely no problem. So I have to just barely give the nod to Trevor Bauer over Sonny Gray. But like I said, it's so tight, and after their next round of starts, one could be better than the other. But hey, that's the name of the game. We're sitting here at the quarter mark, and we got to make a decision on it. So we're going to go with Bauer just over Gray. Next up, we have MVP in the National League, and it's going to be different names this year. We're not going to have Yelich, who's off to a rough start. We're not going to have Bellinger. It's going to be some different guys. And I got to give some recognition to one man first, in Donovan Solano for San Francisco. This has been a dude who his numbers have been up and down over his career, is just on a tear for the Giants this season. 47 at-bats, he's batting .447. Tops in the league by a long shot. Only one home run, but he's also got 14 RBIs. This guy is killing it, and that's just compared to his MLB career stats. I mean, he's batting .275 in his career, not awful. He only has 14 home runs and 136 RBIs in his career, over 1,300 at-bats. He's killing it right now, and at 32 years old, he's been a very, very great surprise for a Giants team that's trying to fight in a loaded NL West, sitting at 6-9 on the season. Had to give him a little recognition, but it gets difficult then when we break it down to who I think are potentially the two best guys in the discussion. So, like I said, I got two names that are greatly deserving, but it depends on what you value at this point in the season, I would say more. If you value winning and team record when it comes to an MVP, then you might lean more one way than the other. If you just want the sheer absurd numbers so far, then we got another guy for you. So if you're a numbers dude and you just want to see what's this individual doing so far in the season, well, then we got to go with Nicholas Castellanos. What he's doing for Cincinnati. Yeah, they got those two pitchers that are dominating. They got a guy at the plate who's doing pretty dang well so far as well. Castellanos has 7 home runs on the season. Just hitting the cover off the ball. 16 RBIs. .340 batting average, .411 on base percentage, slugging at .840. He has some absurd numbers, and it's been through 14 games and 50 at-bats. I mean, 17 hits, 11 of those 17 hits are extra base hits. He's been awesome. That move in free agency is just helping this Reds team offense. Now they got to start translating it more into wins, though. And that's why I kind of fall back on this second guy, because I'm looking at someone whose team has a winning record and has been very good so far this season. And so if I had my vote on National League MVP so far this season, I'm going to give the slight nudge to Charlie Blackmon for the Colorado Rockies. He has 13 games played, 52 at-bats. Close to Castellanos there. He's got 22 hits to Castellanos 17. Now, only 3 home runs to 7, but 15 RBIs. He's right up there with RBIs. His batting average is at .423 on base percentage, .446. The only thing is that the slugging numbers just aren't up there, but that has a big deal to do with the home runs so far. Just about even in walks, less strikeouts. Blackmon has been great for the Rockies, and the Rockies team is sitting in first place and top of the NL West, and we just probably didn't see that coming, competing right up there with the Dodgers. So if I had to take a pick on my NL MVP this year, at the quarter mark, of course, I'm going to go with Blackmon over Castellanos, and I think I'd get some flack for that, but I think the numbers support him, and he's just as deserving. Just as deserving. So that's what we have for our NL award winners at the quarter mark. We got some more stuff coming for you here on the podcast. We're going to talk about some teams that are on the verge of being sellers. That's going to come next here at a quick commercial break on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
It is the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley. Hoping you're having a great weekend so far, or week, whenever you're listening to this. Making sure you're getting all of your great baseball news. We just got done talking about our American League and National League award winners a quarter of the way through the season. It's funny, I was talking about Aaron Judge as an American League MVP with his 7 home runs. Well, yeah, he just hit his 8th as we're recording, so it doesn't stop. The guy keeps smashing them out of there. And we just got done in the last segment touching mainly on National League guys as we talked about our managers of the year being Bud Black and David Ross. Rookie of the year, we think we had to go with Dustin May so far for the Dodgers. Reliever of the year, Kenley Jansen. He would sit on the top for that. Cy Young, as tough as it is, we got to take Trevor Bauer just over Sonny Gray. Both have been great, both phenomenal so far. And then MVP, it was a tough decision for me, but I had to lean Charlie Blackmon. If you're there for Nicholas Castellanos, I understand. You know what? It's not like I'm going to heavily argue against you on that one. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to say you have a valid point as to why you pick him, but sometimes you just got to value record into this a little bit as well, and that's why I think Blackmon deserves a little bit of love as well. But next up here in the last segment, we are going to be talking about some teams that are on the verge of being sellers. I talked about this a couple times. In this unique 60-game season, there is the realization that at some point, a team has to just pick up and say, hey, we're done. We're out this year. we're not going to make the playoffs. Now, the cool little wrinkle that the MLB threw in here is that 16 teams make the playoffs this year. So a lot of teams could be in contention for longer than they would have expected. But with that said, I think there is a list of about 7 teams, and on these 7, they might even be considering it already, that they might just have to fold up the season and say, hey, let's get prepared to maybe be moving some of our guys because we just don't think we're going to be able to turn this around. Or heck, maybe just the teams in our division are just so good and the teams we're playing in the American League are so good that it's just going to bring us down and we're going to greatly struggle to get into the postseason. And so I have 7 teams written down here. I'm going to start off with the one that pains me the most just because I hate saying it. It's my Boston Red Sox. I think they're on that verge of things going very south. Now, they've won 2 games in a row. That's huge. But I will consistently push the button that this pitching has me terrified. Offense can carry you so far. And they do have offensive weapons. They have a lot on this team that could be valuable for other teams, and they have the players that they could potentially move if another team would be interesting. Right away, Jackie Bradley is a great defensive player, and he's having some of his best offensive performance that he's had over his career. Someone to consider to move. JD Martinez, the DH, is valuable on all sides. It's someone you have to consider moving as well to free up any type of potential money. I wouldn't want to see Christian Vasquez go, but he's been swinging a pretty good stick so far this season, and as a catcher, offense from a catcher sometimes is hard to come by, and people might be interested in that as well. And just try to re-up that farm system. You know your pitching is down. You know that you got some young guys to build with going to the future. I mean, Verdugo has been fun to watch. Devers is there for going forward. Bogarts is there going forward. Maybe it's time to just sell a little bit. And with ownership there, they haven't really bought into a rebuild that much because in free agency, they're always so active. They're trying to be competitive at all times. This could be the season where they just buy into rebuilding the team, trying to get what they can in the farm system, get a good draft pick, and go from there. So as much as it pains me to say, I don't think the Boston Red Sox are that far away from considering moving. And, you know, you hate to say it with the little pitching that you have, but you might have to consider moving a starter like Eovaldi. He's the one bright spot you really have on the team. Somebody might offer you a good amount to get him. I mean, it's something you're going to have to consider, that's for sure. The second team that I think that is very much on the verge of being sellers is the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, this was one of my teams that I was excited to see this year. I thought they could be fun, could be interesting, could be somewhat competitive. Well, they're off to a slow start, and granted, they've had a lot going on. They've had some postponements. They've had the stadium issues. There's a lot going on with the Blue Jays. And let's not go crazy here. They're not going to be sellers here in the sense that young core is at play. They got a lot of young, nice players that will stay on the team. It is more any vets on the roster that could be moved for a team looking for depth. I legitimately think that a lot of what is on the team for the Blue Jays and their major production isn't going anywhere. But they do have one piece in the back end of that bullpen that is interesting in Ken Giles, if he comes back healthy. And a lot of teams are going to have urgency to get bullpen help. It's going to be a big play, especially after the trade deadline when the 60-game season, these games get to be so much more valuable. You want to have good pitching at the back end. If Travis Shaw continues to be all right for this Blue Jays team, would they consider moving him? He hasn't played a ton, but he is sitting at 30 years old. That's a piece depth-wise you could see going somewhere else. And there's just a couple other guys that maybe they can just move and get a little bit in return. Maybe Jeff Panik will be another guy that gets moved, or Joe Panik, that gets moved. at 29 years old. I mean, it's the young core is going to stay safe. Biggio, Guerrero, Bichette, Gurriel, they're not going anywhere. I mean, it's not happening. We also could throw probably Hernandez in there. I mean, they have a lot of young guys to get exciting about. They're close. They're not far away from making it happen. I think the Blue Jays might end up trading off some pitching and just some position players, but none of the young guys. The Kansas City Royals. Now, they're putting up a little bit of a fight against this Twins team recently, and that's been fun to watch. But they just don't have much going for them in the long term for this. They really need to think about rebuilding the team as well. I've always been wondering as of recent years if they're going to look into trading Salvador Perez at 30 now. I mean, he's been a solid catcher. He just seems a lot older than 30 because he's got a lot of mileage on him. Definitely someone that I would be interested in seeing. I mean, Whit Merrifield, he's having a good season. They got some guys that they can move on that I think people would get interested in. Jorge Soler, I mean, the guy mashed a lot of home runs last season. A lot of home runs last season. Right now, he's got 3, batting .255. That's not bad. And the same thing with J.D. Martinez. While his defense isn't horrible, the DH is valuable on both sides. You could get some good return for him. Why not give it a chance? There's some young players for the Royals that won't be touched. Is this the time that they decide to finally move on from Alex Gordon? Is it happening? There's just a lot of questions around this team and what they could be moved. And similar with the Red Sox and the Blue Jays, they have some guys which just, if they're willing to part with it and help their farm system, they could trade some guys. They could trade some names. That's for sure. Number 4 for me would have to be the Seattle Mariners. They are in that AL West where it's just a lot of uncertainty. They're sitting at the bottom right now, percentage-wise, at 5-10. And they have some players they can move on from as well. They got a little bit of age on there. Kyle Seager being the one that's having a great season at 32 years old. Batting .315, 2 home runs, 14 RBIs. You could try to get some return there. D. Gordon, is he going to be healthy to play? I mean, his numbers aren't phenomenal this year, but he's definitely probably a good trade candidate. Experienced infielder, some speed on base pass if you need it. He's only been in 10 games with 27 at-bats so far, so he hasn't played a great deal this season so far. But I think this team is one that's excited to potentially bring up some young guys to play. I mean, you could see Kyle Lewis has been absolutely phenomenal for the team so far, and then Shed Long Jr., he's playing at 24. He's getting some consistent play. His numbers aren't great, but they're giving him a run. I think this is just a season where they kind of knew they were going to throw things away at the beginning. They have the young guys. We're going to play them. We're going to see what we have, and then when the deadline comes around, I think the Mariners end up being a team to make some moves. Next up, number 5 is going to have to be the Pittsburgh Pirates, and this team I feel so bad for because at the predictions at the beginning of the season, a lot of people knew that they were going to be towards the bottom of the NL Central. All right. Then everything hits. The pandemic hits. Our schedule changes. 60 games. You're playing just the National League Central and the American League Central, which is 2 tough divisions top to bottom. Cubs, Brewers, Cardinals, Reds. If the Cardinals ever start playing again. Those are 4 teams that had aspirations to make the playoffs in just your division. And then we look at the AL Central. The Twins are good. The White Sox are good. The Indians are going to be good. And now this Tigers team is actually being competitive too. They just have a gauntlet of a schedule to go through. And the thing that's nice, though, about Pittsburgh is if they buy into the rebuild, they have some names as well that would be easy for them to sell. Josh Bell, I know if you're a Pirate fan, you probably don't want to see him go because he's only 27, but you could probably get a pretty dang good return from him, and I think teams would be interested in him because of his bat. Again, American League and National League would love him with the DH right now. Moran at third base. Collin Moran just hits the ball hard. I mean, he's 27 as well. Maybe you don't want to give up on him. Maybe you believe these guys are there for a couple more years. But some moves just really feel like they need to be made for this team, as it's just not clicking. And what doesn't help as well is their pitching is struggling in Pittsburgh. And they're trying to get some things together going. I mean, ERA-wise, it's just ugly for Pittsburgh. I mean, they're looking to put anything together. It's been a tough time for the Pirates, hoping that they can find some trade partners to help that farm system grow and things turn around for them. But they're just in the tough times of being in a tough division, playing a tough AL Central as well. Their record could be ugly at the end of this season, and I think they probably know pretty quickly that they're going to be sitting towards the bottom this season. As of right now, I mean, they're only 3-11 on the season. It's going to be a hard climb to get out of, considering that Cincinnati is the first team in front of them, and they're around 6-8. The sixth team that I think is on the verge of being a seller would have to be the Arizona Diamondbacks, and this one is just upsetting to me. They're not out of it yet. We talk about the NL West being tough. Towards the top it is. Colorado, the Rockies, and the Dodgers, they're both tough. I mean, they're 10-3, 10-4, respectively. But they can still catch San Diego at 8-6. They're right there with the Giants. They have an offense that is great. And I say that in the sense of potential-wise. They're not showing as much as they should, only putting up 48 runs so far. The problem is, and we knew this, is if the pitching's going to come along and be good. They shelled the money out for Madison Bumgarner. And while he hasn't been awful in the sense of what he's capable of, that 7.04 ERA has got to come down. In 15 innings, he's given up 12 runs. Not what they were expecting when they gave him that contract. Zach Gallen, been okay starting pitcher. 2 quality starts for them so far, 2.81 ERA. He's been all right. It's going to be the other guys. Can Robbie Ray figure things out? Can Merrill Kelly figure things out? Kelly hasn't been awful either, 2.63, but their starting pitching was the question. Can they get enough pitching and then their offense come around to help things out? Because they went in. They got Marte, Ketel Marte, Cole Calhoun. It's just disappointing on this team. Disappointing is the best way to put it. I would watch them to say that they're going to have a little turnaround, but if things don't happen, becoming a seller at the trade deadline could be in play. And then the last team has to be the New York Mets. If there is one team that is just got to be bummed out from these Marlins coming back and playing well, it's got to be the Mets, because you're just digging your hole even deeper in the National League East. The Braves have had a lot of tough hands dealt to them, but they're still thriving through. Philadelphia hasn't played many games. Same with the Nationals. They're trying to get some games in. But the Mets are sitting at 5-9 right now, and they are going to have some questions coming for them because they just are not producing the offense that they need this season. We know they have DeGrom. They have a bunch of other pitchers too that you would think their team would be better. I mean, I see their pitching staff and I just go, man, you guys should be better with Matz and Waka and Porcello. But it's just not coming. And then the bullpen at the back end, when they just traded away so much to get Diaz from the Mariners, they are struggling at the back end as well. DeGrom is doing as much as he can, but he's sitting there at 2-1 with a 2.12 ERA. He's still being great, maybe not as great as he's been in the past, but his best is pretty dang good. And this Mets team is just not figuring out the rest of the way, and a lot of their other starters are just getting shelled. As Steven Matz, 5.65 ERA, Michael Wacha, 6.43, Rick Porcello, 6.92. These guys are just not holding up in games, and they are struggling. And it also falls on the offense as well. it's been tough for the Mets to get things going. Pete Alonso batting .204 with only 1 home run after his monster season. They had the drama happen with Cespedes, who just walked away. I mean, it's tough times for the Mets, and I think they will be a team that will be considering to fold it in and start becoming a trade seller at some point. In a 60-game season, the pressure is just on. And I'd like some of these teams moving forward if it was 162. I would think the Mets have a chance of rebounding. I would say that starting staff is going to get better. The offense is going to get better. Diamondbacks, I think the same thing. The problem is the time crunch is upon us, and it's just not going to be as easy to do. So at what point do these teams start becoming realistic in their years? Are we going to wait till 30 games in, and then we decide, hey, the season's probably not going to be ours. We're not going to make the postseason. It's going to go further. I don't know. That's something I'm definitely going to be watching. Along with, even if these guys become sellers, are the returns going to be as great? Are teams going to be willing to give up as much in the terms of prospects if they think they're about to go all in? This trade season is going to be interesting, and I like talking about it early because I think it's important, and it'll be stressed upon once we get closer to that deadline this season more than a lot of others. So that's what I think for teams that could be on the verge of being sellers. 7 of the 30. You hope not. You hope not, but I just think it's inevitable for some of these teams for sure. So that's what I have for you here in the final segment here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you again for listening. Would like to also ask to write a positive review about the podcast. Maybe ask some questions that you'd like discussed on here. It really helps out a great deal. Also, if you can, go ahead and follow Twitter page. That's where we do most of our action. Me and the other guys taking part on the GSMC Baseball Podcast Twitter. It means a lot. Would love to hear from all you guys. So that's going to be it for me here, Collin Manley. Hoping you guys have a great night, day, whenever you're listening. It's going to be all here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.